Greetings, fellow armchair Imagineers. Tiki here.
And BlueDragonFive.
And welcome to the Main Street Cinema, the show where we discuss the finer points of filmmaking in our Easter special on the So You Want to Be an Imagineer YouTube special. But wait, Tiki, what is this madness? The Fantastic Four has absolutely nothing to do with Easter.
Well, you see, folks, to celebrate Easter, we're talking about the ultimate Marvel Easter egg. And no, we're not talking about Stanley. We're talking about the ultimate Marvel Easter egg, in that it's a true hidden gem that, for the longest time, was unfindable. Was the unfindable Easter egg for the longest time. And as successful as Marvel is, even they, to some degree, even they have their own Star Wars holiday special. In this case, the Roger Corman Fantastic Four from 1994, or would have been from 1994.
And you know what? I find the Star Wars Holiday Special to be just as charming as this movie hypothetically is.
Yeah, and specifically, we're not just talking about the Roger Corman Fantastic Four. More specifically, we're talking about the documentary that's in the style of the death of something like the Death of Superman Lives. It tells us the story of the superhero film that never made it to the big screen, but got so darn close. That's why we're here to talk about Doomed, the untold story of Roger Corman's Fantastic Four.
All right.
Yeah.
So,
that's a hidden gem, like an Easter egg, until you look for it and you find it. It's kind of neat.
Yeah, Dragon, this is a pretty decent documentary. We were just going over before we went on air our Mount Rushmore of documentaries in this sort of like fandom genre. We would say there's definitely some good runner-ups, but I would say the Mount Rushmore would be 2 Disney documentaries and 2 Star Wars documentaries in particular. That would be Waking Sleeping Beauty and The Boys, the Sherman Brothers story on the Disney side of things, and then Empire of Dreams and The People versus George Lucas on the Star Wars side of things. And granted, there's a lot of outliers to that, but Dragon, you and I don't know, we might be 2 of the biggest fans of the internet, of this sort of thing. You know what I mean? Of this this kind of storytelling of like, we're going to get like way down into the nitty gritty. Like you just told me about a 3-hour Nightmare on Elm Street documentary on Netflix that I can't wait to watch. Like that sounds amazing. So
it's really good too.
Dragon, like we're total, like I won't call you a dork about it, but I will say I am a total dork about all this stuff. So yeah, the documentary is pretty good. My overall thoughts on Fantastic Four, I do have a lot of nostalgia for the characters and kind of the anticipation of the first movie, and then also the letdown of, I shouldn't say the first movie, you know what I mean, the 20th Century Fox movie that kind of came out of this version.
The 2005 version.
The Tim Story version.
Yes.
Dragon, I actually do kind of have a weird sort of fondness for Rise of the Silver Surfer, though. I will say that.
I'm easier on the Tim Story Fantastic Four films than a lot of people, especially the first one. But yeah, of course, I don't.
It's funny. I don't like the first one at all. I really don't. But I think Rise of the Silver Surfer has some really redeemable moments in it. Some good action. I think the Lawrence Fishburne Silver Surfer plays pretty well. I think it's overall a way more solid film than the original Tim Story one, but I don't want to have that debate right now. Anyways, so without further ado, folks, Dragon, you want to set up the commentary and what we're doing with it?
Well, I thought I was going to get into some of the backstory, but
oh, yes, really quick if you want to, sure.
So, folks, let me outline just in case some people aren't up to snuff on the Roger Corman Fantastic Four, because not a lot of people have seen it, but it is now available for everyone to see it. So, if you're really intrigued by this documentary, or us talking about this documentary, by all means, check out the original. So here's the backstory, just kind of just in case you haven't seen it, just kind of catch you up, just going into this thing. So, it's the early '80s. Marvel is selling movie rights like crazy because they're I don't want to say hemorrhaging money, but this is like a period where Marvel's really kind of doing bad financially. They really need to kind of pinch their pennies, so to speak, for big plans down the future, which of course we saw those panned out. So we have Burt Eichinger, or Eichinger. I like Eichinger, but anyway. One is Burt and New Constantine, a film company. They optioned the film. They optioned they option the Fantastic Four film rights, but are under the gun to make the film with a low budget and not a lot of time to do it in, which of course is kind of like an impossible situation. If they want the option, they have to do that. Otherwise, they're going to the rights would have reverted back to Marvel. So, with Roger, Marvel or someone else down the grapevine, it's unclear. But with Roger Corman on board, kind of one of the masters of kind of making a film on a low budget. So they went to Roger Corman with this. Eichinger went to Roger Corman. He got his guys on board, formulated his team, his cast, his crew, yada yada. We get a director on that. They make the film and they promote the heck out of it. And here's where kind of our premise of the film coming up is that right before it arrives, literally, it is pulled from theaters at the last second. I kid you not, pulled from theaters at the last second. Marvel pays at least double the film's budget to stop the film's release to produce the Fantastic Four films down the line that we all know and sometimes dread today.
Oh, we love them, Dragon.
Years later,
we know and love them.
And years later, of course, this Fantastic Four 1994 version does make its debut in bootleg form. Now, where the documentary comes in here, like a sentence, is that around 2014, I was aware, and I'll get into how I factor in this. So around 2014, Marty Langford and Mark Sykes and company, they begin this documentary. Essentially, one of the guys involved in the casting, he's a character in the film, along with the director of this film, they got together and they all wanted to tell this story of everyone just says oh yeah, that film was so bad it was never released. It's kind of a misnomer. Yeah, the film was so bad they didn't release it. Well, not exactly. A little more myriad of details. There's kind of a story there to be told. So they begin this documentary, tell the story right with the people involved to set the record straight, And 2 years later, 2014, the film comes out, and now we know. And I was one of the backers of this thing, and it's well, I'm sorry. Maybe I shouldn't say that because they didn't do necessarily a Kickstarter. I'm thinking of Kickstarter right now. Sorry. I mean, I bought my copy through the website, so I don't know if the proceeds went to the film or not. It might have been Aftermath or anything. Because here's the thing, I remember they got started in 2014, but they did like pre-orders, and I might have been waiting for an after until it wasn't a pre-order. I can't quite recall. But then again, it's so weird. I got it in the mail though, even I don't remember ordering it.
Really?
Because it was so long ago. It was like it came last year, and I told Tiki about this. I mentioned it to him briefly, like the Doom Fantastic Four story last year. And the funny thing is, I remember looking at it and says, "Oh, it's a pre-order. I want to get it." I guess I did it in 2014 without realizing. And 2 years go by, I keep checking to see if the thing's available yet. And the minute it's available, I just
that's great.
Came in the mail by the time I looked at it. Serendipity.
all right.
Destiny. Anyway, so folks, of course, with any commentary, what we're going to do here is we're going to try to keep a conversation, which usually is a challenge for us. But in this case, this one's more kind of a dialogue, so we might be able to just kind of go topic by topic for this one. We're not quite certain. But point is, if you link it up with us, you should be able to kind of see what we're seeing at the same time. If not, we're going to try to keep it kind of detailed enough in the conversation you'd be able to follow along anyway. And of course, what we're going to do is my associate here is going to count up from 1, 2, 3, go, and on go, much like Lethal Weapon movies. On go, that's when we go.
Right, and of course, this movie's widely available. It's on Amazon Prime, or
from the website itself.
Right, if you're like Dragon and you ordered it 2 years ago, and then you suddenly got it last year.
And also, one last thing to clarify: we had a commentary loophole on this one because let's just say the existing commentary is kind of for a price. Because we like you folks, we're doing it for free.
Yeah, look, and if they asked for maybe $1 to $3 for a commentary, I'd be like, you know what? All right, fine, I'll chip in for that. But $10 for a commentary track, Dragon, I don't know. I just, as a podcaster who does all my work for free, I don't know.
Yeah,
I don't want to get down on them or anything like that.
Exactly, because I forgot how much they charge, but it was I think more than you should charge for commentary. Point is, we're doing it for free. We want to talk about it, and we kind of debate upon it. So let's do commentary. It'll be fun.
Commentary loophole.
Loophole.
All right, Dragon, you ready to
go? 1 sec. Yes.
Okay, folks, commentary for Doom, the untold story of the Roger Corman Fantastic Four. In 1, 2, 3, go. all right. So I think this documentary really does have a good use of just the talking head element, telling the story and drawing you into it.
Yeah. Yeah, it's here we have a good kind of refresher on the story in the beginning of this film. We have a kind of a setup of the Hollywood system, like when Jay Underwood just kind of comes in the beginning, they're just kind of telling us, like, why is it? Oh man, why does it have to be that way? Just again, it's like building some mystery, building some intrigue in the beginning, which I do like. It's setting up our story as a tragedy. I love setting this whole story up as a tragedy because we know the end result, but we don't know all the facts that led to this.
Mm-hmm.
It's kind of funny that we keep talking about tragedies all the time. Better Call Saul and Bates Motel. We love tragedies. I don't know why. And
I think that's just like probably something to do with the age we're living in, like Breaking Bad. It's like we're an age of nihilist, Dragon. Let's just face it.
So again, I think tonally this is a really strong opening. We get just enough footage here and there. I love that throughout the film here, you get just enough footage that even if you haven't seen the film, you get it. You get all the points you need to know about it, because the story was crap in the film. So basically, what they're recapping really doesn't do a disservice to what was eventually made.
All right, so I do think it has an effective job of kind of introducing the main characters. And Dragon, I'm sorry, this is something that I do when we talk about documentaries. It might make some people like bat an eye, but I like to refer to the people in documentaries as characters, because they're telling a story and they are people within said story. I don't know. Do you object to that?
I agree in calling them characters because we just gonna end up doing that anyway. But by the way, I love this opening here. They use like the big moment from the film, like kind of that great iconic poster image that we get in the film as the doomed kind of backdrop here. Really good opening. But I agree with you. In this case, I would definitely call them characters because they are kind of bigger than life and they are kind of representative elements of the story. So I think the character definitely fits them in this case. Yes.
Mm-hmm.
We're here. We're kind of meeting everyone. There's Michael Bailey Smith, who was actually in the Freddy Krueger documentary, by the way.
Nice.
Doing the Nightmare on Elm Street thing. He plays Super Freddy, the giant muscular Freddy Krueger in that one movie.
So going through these characters, and I'm sorry to keep calling them that, but the two that really drew me in, Dragon, of course, Roger Corman himself. As soon as he comes up, anyone who's seen Waking Sleeping Beauty, he's basically the Katzenberg of this story.
You know what's weird? I kind of thought Avi Arad was.
Well, I think Avi Arad would be if he was involved more within the context of the documentary, and I think maybe that was a mistake to not... Like, I understand they can't interview him, but I think maybe they could have had just them talking about his presence as a looming threat a little bit more, because I have definitely heard horror stories about Avi Arad. Like, look, it's like I respect the guy for turning Marvel into what it is.
That's what I'm saying. He fits the Katzenberg mold for the reasons like that, because again, we know we owe a lot to Avi Arad. For me, I know Avi. I personally knew Avi. Well, I didn't know that guy, but I'm saying I knew Avi Arad from his work on the Spider-Man films, and I always I associate Avi Arad with Spider-Man. I didn't know about the X-Men thing till later on, like his involvement in the X-Men franchise.
Yeah, and Avi Arad, it's like, look, and it's kind of like maybe a Walt Disney thing too. It's like in our Disney debate we did recently, I was kind of like using that whole tactic of like, oh, Walt Disney, he struck fear into the hearts of people. And I don't know. I think Avi Arad did the same thing. And he's not necessarily a villain in real life, but I think he should have been focused on a little bit more as a primary villain in this documentary. And I think there's ways they could have been creative about using him a little more. I don't know.
Let's talk more about Arad later.
Okay, fair enough.
So right here, what they're doing is going
That's
over
kind of Dragon. They should have seeded Arad in earlier. But anyways, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
So right now they're kind of basically doing what I recapped for you. We're going over the origins of the film itself, the $1 million budgeted film, and it's interesting that the head of Trauma, Lawrence, Lloyd Kaufman.
Mm-hmm.
He, it's so funny here is that Trauma Films is known for being the kind of the lower budget in comparison to Roger Corman. The point, like these guys, like kind of the go-to guys for a low budget film that against the kind of quirky, like the independent film. The independent films of low budgets, I should say. I mean, they're like super kind of like they're a kitsch market. They're kind of a cult favorite market. And the fact that what they're kind of saying here is that even this guy turned it down because he knew Stan Lee didn't want to embarrass him. He's just like I don't want to take on a big thing. Basically, it's such an impossible goal to reach. We can't even do it. And then the next guy in line takes it over. That's kind of what's being said here.
And it just basically turns this whole story into the Bad News Bears. You know what I mean?
Yeah, it's the ultimate underdog story.
Totally,
You're rooting for these guys. Again, it's kind of like I don't want to just keep going with Rocky, but it is kind of like it's like you're rooting for him, even though he's gonna. It's like, what if you knew Rocky wasn't going to get it in the end?
Well, I guess it's like rewatching Rocky in that case. It's like you're rewatching the movie and he's going to lose the fight in the end. But it's like, gosh darn it, you can't help but be like, come on, Rock, come on, you can do it. Like every time, right, Dragon? Every damn time.
Sure. Now that I'm saying, I think your Bad News Bears analogy is probably more accurate. So I'm going to go with that.
Because it's like a ragtag group of people who are like, doing the best they can, and like they've got really quirky personalities.
Right. So here's Mark Sykes. Now Mark Sykes, again, he's involved in this film as well. That's why they definitely have him on here. Now what I love here is he's kind of our voice of the comic book fan, the Fantastic Four, because I think there's a lot of interesting things that are brought up in this document, a lot of interesting concepts that we always talk about today with superhero films. I think in retrospect, this film has a lot of great meaning in comparison, like what the landscape for superhero films is now versus what it was then. And this is like even before there was a then with like the Sam Raimi Spider-Mans, the X-Men films. This is like way back when.
I mean, a big part of this narrative is the fact that back in the day, like the TV version of The Incredible Hulk was the greatest thing that we've seen from Marvel live action. And, outside of that, it was basically like stuff like Howard the Duck and the Punisher and, the Captain America, the 1990 Captain America,
Remember, folks, I mean, there was a day when DC was the head honcho in film.
Right.
There was. And this is like right after that, and then Marvel was like getting their sea legs after DC really hit it strong with Batman.
It was kind of funny, Dragon, because in like this Corman Fantastic Four...
Well, Warner's, I should say, be more specific. Warner Brothers.
This Corman Fantastic Four is just basically like the ultimate sacrificial lamb that got all the comic book fans Sam Raimi Spider-Man in 2002, and of course X-Men before that. But Dragon, I gotta tell you, like just I was throwing shade on a Rod Air earlier, but Raimi Spider-Man from 2002, it's still a great movie. It's still a fun movie. I don't necessarily think it holds up quite as well as Spider-Man 2 does. But back in the day, in the theater, man, that was a magical experience for me. That was a mind-blowing experience. So, I don't know. And it's worth questioning, like, what did this Fantastic Four movie have just kind of, like, continued the downward trend? Like, not because it was a bad movie, but because it was low budget and maybe people, like, especially because of
the Spider-Man show.
Oh, God. I want to look into this. It looks ridiculous.
And let me remind everyone, I disagree with Chris Gore. The Incredible Hulk show was awesome. He's fighting a real bear in that image, by the way. That's Lou Ferrigno actually wrestling with a bear.
Yeah, take that, Leo DiCaprio. Where's Lou Ferrigno's Oscar?
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. I mean, again, seriously, folks, check out I believe that's still on Netflix if everyone wants to check that out. Seriously, The Incredible Hulk show, that's a great show. Watch it. It's like Bixby was the bomb in Incredible Hulk versus like Affleck was the bomb in Phantom. So I'm saying Bixby was the bomb.
Oh God.
So by the way, Chris Gore is on screen now. First of all, I love his jacket. I love his hoodie. Secondly, I want to say Chris Gore, I love it. He's kind of our. We remember him. He was from the Raiders of the Lost Ark documentary we watched. The greatest fan film ever made. He's kind of that kind of the film and fan magazine guy. And he represents kind of the comic book fan very well. I think it passed, but again, looking in retrospect, the Daredevil that people mocked back then, of course, is like so great in the Netflix show now.
Yeah, Daredevil kind of went through the stages, right? Like in the Incredible Hulk, not a very flattering representation of the character. Yeah. The Affleck Daredevil, gosh darn it, they were trying, right? Like, gosh darn it, they were trying. I'm sorry, go ahead.
Well, I'm sorry. I was going to say that with Sean Howe, one of my favorite guys in this thing, by the way. What he's going through is like kind of basically what Marvel back then was kind of going up in their planning phases of film, which include
Wes Craven, Doctor Strange would have
been out of all of them, amazing. I think, out of all of those, I was most excited with that one. Yeah,
because I'm sure watching that Friday the 13th documentary or Nightmare on Elm Street, I should say, You know about Wes Craven, I'm
Yeah, and of
sure.
course, unfortunately, Wes Craven no longer around. But,
I know. That bums me out
but
talking
I mean,
about
still,
it.
also you see some seeds in there of like kind of what kind of happened with those projects, like Black Panther. Wesley Snipes playing Black Panther. Well, we know, Wesley Snipes then went on to Blade. So the fact that those ideas are being tossed around
Right,
kind of led to
right.
some other things, and of course now we have Black Panther. But still, Wesley Snipes in a Marvel world, which kind of kickstarted the Marvel films because we had Blade before the X-Men. A lot of people forget that.
It's just because Blade is more of like the action horror genre as opposed to like it's not directly a comic book. People don't directly relate it to comic books in the same way they do X
Yeah.
Men.
Yeah. Got some good storyboards, by the way, in this throughout this whole thing. We're using these cool storyboards
So
from the film.
the knockoff character of the Mole Man is a really fascinating guy for me in this movie, especially the way they use him in the trailer. Like he's saying this really
Yes.
like cryptic line at the end of the trailer.
Mm-hmm. I know what you thought about it. It's my favorite part of the trailer.
Right. Yeah. So I don't know. Like, have you looked into the full movie? Like, how much? I'm curious how much screen time that guy has.
Well, I mean, he's essentially Doom's Lack, and he's like they're going after this diamond for an experiment. So he's the guy trying to get the diamond the whole movie. So he's like Doom's sidekick, Doom's main henchman, essentially. Bear in mind, I watched it once, and I had to skim through any other times I've watched it. So I believe that's what he is. Now, something to mention about the Mole Man again is looking at things in context here. That's funny. Uh, the they weren't allowed to use the Mole Man because of a rights issue.
Mhm.
They weren't allowed to do it because they have rights to everyone. And again, I just wish they put like the main contract out, like what the usage rights are for characters. I wish they put that out. Like, can we release like an outline of the rules at some
Dragon,
point? But,
it's stuff like this that made comic book fans just never think that, in our wildest dreams that we would get like Thor versus Gladiator Hulk. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Exactly. So it's funny thing with the Mole Man is that we had the same thing that happened with this film happen somewhat in the same way happened with the 2015 Fantastic Four. They had a Mole Man character and they had to change it.
Mhm.
To not be in the Mole Man. Exactly the same thing.
Oh, God.
So also, I just want to mention, I love they did kind of the Nolan approach in that they picked up comics from the comic book shop to really just kind of do the verisimilitude that Richard Donner. So doing the like Christopher Nolan, what he did was when he's working on Batman Begins, he picked up year one, he picked up all the essential Batman books that would influence Batman Begins, and they did that for here. The main two stories being the origin of the Fantastic Four and the first Doctor Doom story.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
But what did you think of Carnosaur? I know you're a big Jurassic Park fan. Did you know about Carnosaur at all?
I did know about it. Yes, I haven't seen it. And of course, it is a very interesting kind of stark contrast, right? Like, I feel like Carnosaur versus Jurassic Park is kind of like the equivalent to like Transformers versus Transmorphers, or like those Asylum movies that come out.
Yeah, I like this device of the quotes on screen. What do you think?
I do too. It's very effective.
Because I like how they're kind of counterintuitive to like kind of what's been said, or like what's basically like I love the first one out of all of them where it's so like Stan Lee says, and there's a film, no, a film's not being made, and this is no, that's not entirely true. And like undercutting the previous quote. That's like aggressive quotes. Quotes with attitude, man.
So man, I am so curious about this thing suit. It just looks so expressive to me, like the facial features and everything as we're demonstrating right here.
And honestly, I tell you, the thing here reminds me of because there's the difference between this and Superman Lives is that if you can dig stuff up on Superman Lives, all the things with this you have to get from the horse's mouth, and structurally as we unfold this mystery of our tragedy, we know the end, but we learn the history. It adds so much more meaning here because like this mask here. It's like the Nick Cage photo from Death of Superman Lives. Remember, like Nick Cage was taking it at an angle.
Totally.
We had all that like
which
the
thing. I think that was like the best narrative device they used in Death of Superman Lives.
And it's not exactly the same thing here, but the point is, like, in the movie, a suit looks cheesy, but you look at it here and you look at it in its development, the logic behind it, it has, like, we had never seen a thing with the brow like this. They actually put the brow in the Thing costume. It actually had these really cool servos and animatronics in it that made it move. It looked for the time and on a really low budget like that. That was a really impressive thing they worked. There's a practical Thing costume that could actually emote. Even the Chickless one didn't have it. Chickless was makeup. This is like kind of some technology.
I mean, the Chickless one, like, it had more detail to it, but this one, like, I mean, just like the close-up that we're getting now, if you're watching it on the commentary, it's just like it's very it's so expressive. It's much more expressive than Chickless could have done.
Again, I'm amazed that I completely forgot that we had the the famous Thing brow. Again, we still just haven't had that. The awesome Jack Kirby Thing brow.
Right.
And speaking of course, Jack Kirby stuff, I love that. Here's the thing: just makes me fall in love with these guys as they're kind of our lovable losers of the movie for our characters. Here's that these guys really cared. They cared about the source material. The director Oli Sansone, he pointed out, like, no, the thing, you got to go do this man, this monster, which of course is the famous thing, sort of like, he's a human guy, even though he's made of rock, and he's just a giant guy. He's like, he feels like a monster. They tapped into that story. It's like, in this design, you've got to express the humanity because of that. Again, they really care about the source material, and they care about doing the best they can, even if it's in, like, crappy circumstances.
Now, Joseph Culp here, Dragon, I think
he exemplifies this.
I think he is my favorite person in this documentary.
For me, it's him, but it's more so Alex Hyde White. Alex Hyde White is my favorite, but Joseph Culp is a near second, though. He's really close.
I think Joseph Culp is probably, like, I think he contributes the most to the actual narrative, I think.
I'll agree with you there. Well, again, it's between, him and Alex.
I mean, the movie's kind of named for him. You got to realize that, right?
True. Yes. Yeah, like he I think is more in line with Oli's kind of and character arc here, that he's more cool with it, but again, it's like Oli has like kind of the Jedi sort of like kind of peace thing about him, where he's taken in the negativity, he's kind of zenned it out. It's like he's processed it, he's moved on. Joseph is a character, again, we're using character as a descriptive here, but Joseph, in a way, he is close to Oli's character arc, but he still feels like it could still be done, though. You get that in his character of like, you know what? I've lived my life. I've accepted this as a part of it. The fact that it didn't get made, I can still
like, come on, man, get me in the studio tomorrow. Let's finish up the voice work on Doom.
Essentially, it's basically Joseph is kind of like Kevin Smith from Death of Superman Lives. We're like, hey, I can't write Superman, but I can sure talk about writing Superman.
Right.
And in the case of Joseph, it's like that, but what if we still had that ache and like raring to go of like, oh, if we can only just do it again. Yeah. Of course, here we got Jay Underwood in his Uncle Buck debut. Basically, we're getting the origin of like how our guys got cast.
Yeah, I mean, all these people are no slouches to Hollywood at the time. You know what I mean? They definitely weren't unknowns.
Yeah. Well, I don't know. I think I would argue they were unknowns to a degree. Like how Christian Bale was kind of an unknown before, not counting American Psycho. Christian Bale was relatively unknown.
Well, that's the thing, Dragon. Like people like Alex Hyde White, like they've all had established, not necessarily starring roles, but they've all been in the business. You know what I mean? Like
that's what I'm saying. Like again, they've been low level, and they all banked on this to kind of hopefully raise their careers a notch.
Yeah, so when I say they're no slouches, I'm just saying, like, they're people who have been in the industry for years before this movie came about for them.
Yeah, I think from what I understand, I think Alex had the most experience though, because he talks about it a little later on, and this is what I'm talking about here with Joseph and that. Again, I love how they all just brought in the performance, and these
his
people.
Dr. Doom voice sounds really cool.
That's what I'm saying. It's like I think
it's
this is a really
like
good cast.
Paul Frees quality to it.
Yeah, it's like I think the end result is a solid cast of vaguely unknown people. I'm just saying like they're not in the stratosphere. They're not like like huge names, but again, they're people who've been they're experienced actors, but they're still relatively unknown.
Right.
And the fact is, like again, these are guys. They're really well cast, and they look like the Fantastic Four. And that's kind of the main thing with the film here. I think the most interesting question brought up is like this film was ahead of its time in that it adapted things so straightforward from the book.
Right. I mean, in a way, it was kind of like the first attempt at doing like a Marvel Cinematic Universe style movie of like, let's just take it directly from page to screen. Because even something like Spider-Man, Dragon, as faithful as that was, it still had to change the mechanic to the organic web shooters. You know what I mean?
Exactly. The Fantastic Four's problem was that it was too faithful in a way. Again, as twisted as it sounds, it was too faithful because it was before its time. That's what undid. Because a lot of the '60s concepts, this is in the '90s, and even by that standard, it's still kind of a 30-year differential. So, the '60s concept of the Fantastic Four to the letter, which is what they essentially went for as much as they could. Again, with budget, with kind of budget and time discrepancies. it won't adapt well because there was in the film they had a really twisted thing where it's technically it's in the book. That's the weird thing is that there's an age discrepancy that they adapted where Reed and Ben bump into the Storms when they're younger. So again, Reed of course ends up with Sue Storm. So you can imagine how kind of twisted that is.
That's really weird. Okay.
I know, but again, technically that's technically it's an age thing that's from the book. They adapted it too well.
I don't like that. I don't like the fact that that's in the book.
Well, that's what I'm saying. It's like an offhanded thing you completely forget about. It's like in that first issue, but again, this thing they really stuck to the first issue, so it was like an offhand. I want to say it's like an offhand.
It's like the first example of Snydering. You know what I mean? Where it's like you stick so panel to panel to it that it just ends up being like a wash.
Yeah, you see what I mean? Though again, it's like even Stanley, he would admit, like, yeah, he would update it, which he agrees with, like how the films have updated certain things about it. So I mean, it's kind of the same thing, but they kind of stuck to it, and they didn't really have time to flesh it out in more drafts. They stuck to essentially that original draft.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
Which read exactly like the Fantastic Four. Now, unfortunately, I'm sorry, I don't mean to kind of dwell on these things, but we are kind of missing a few cool things. Like we saw the ridiculousness of Michael Bailey Smith should have, nothing against the other actor, but Michael Bailey Smith should have been in the Thing costume as well, because when he morphs back into Ben Grimm, he's way too tall and
basically like Ben Grimm is like way taller than the guy who's actually in the Thing costume, which is just insane.
Yeah. Now, this was cool. I love all these other casting choices. Are also a majority of them sound really strong as well. We should mention.
Oh my God! Okay, Patrick Warburton is Ben Grimm. Please, for Marvel Cinematic Universe, please.
Like, tell me that isn't a cool idea.
For Marvel Cinematic Universe, Dragon, for Phase 4 of the Marvel Cinematic Universe, Patrick Warburton as the Thing.
Right, I should mention.
I want to put that into existence right now.
Of course, it is funny that Mark Ruffalo could have been. I assume it was for Ben Grimm, but it could have been for Doctor Doom. They don't really specify. I think they were talking about.
I would really love it if it was for Ben Grimm because of course, like the two like big monster guys, the big friendly monster guys for Marvel.
I gotta tell you, Titus Welliver for either Doctor Doom or Reed Richards, he would have been a decent fit. I gotta tell you, I think Titus Welliver.
Remind me who Titus Welliver is from.
He's the gray-haired guy. He's the
what's his famous role though?
I've seen him in a few things. I'm trying to think. It was more like a Law and Order or something. I feel embarrassed. I can't quite recall that.
Because they said he's like a big deal on TV now, and I believe that. I see his name all over the place.
Unfortunately, I gotta. We'll look it up at the end. Right? So I can't.
Okay. I'm sorry. I didn't mean to put you on the spot like that.
Let's see. So again, results. After all this casting, we do end up with a really solid cast of talented people who, again, are pulled straight from the book. And again, that's kind of feeding into their adapting as well as we like to do now. But again, they don't have the resources to pull that off.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
Again, like their heart's in the right place. Like these are the people you want working on a Fantastic Four movie. Problem is, you want them with the right resources. They're kind of one of my favorite quotes from. There's so many great quotes from him, but one of my go-to quotes from my character for Jim Gordon would be, I work with what I have. Again, it's like Jim Gordon's a character who works with like the bare minimum, and he does what he can with like very bad resources. It's essentially what we're doing here.
I love the Mussolini pose.
And again, it makes sense for Doom. Yeah, and of course, look at this image here. Doom with the folded arms. Doom is a dictator. And again, I love they're putting this thought into it.
Yeah, absolutely.
And again,
they just basically kind of like let the actors have the freedom to kind of like take control of the performance, and really embody the characters.
Yeah. Of course, the cosmic joke is that more than 20 years later, because right now we're kind of ushering. If you count when they started in '92, it's 25 years. If not, it's like 23 years. Mm-hmm. But the point is, like more than 20 years later, the Fantastic Four is falling into the same trap and the same motivations for making a Fantastic Four film. Like we need to keep the rights. That's kind of the bitter joke of it all. Like we're making a film just to make sure we secure the rights to make other ones.
So basically, Miles Teller and etc. all like Michael B. Jordan, are they like strictly under contract to come back if they are asked?
I believe so. Actually,
man.
I'm saying they keep changing it, Tiki. But last I heard, that's the case. Last I heard
is that we're actually going to get a Fan Force Take 2.
That's what I'm saying. I've heard there before there was the logic that, okay, we're doing Deadpool 2 instead of Fantastic 2, but now I'm hearing like we're still going to do Fantastic 2, which doesn't make any sense. I'm hoping that was just a rumor, but no,
Especially because I just put the Patrick Warburton as Ben Grimm thing into existence, and I want that to happen so badly.
Yeah. Okay, let's see. So yeah, they're kind of talking about the motivations for making the film as I kind of went through. Again, I just love how the crew is basically what they're kind of saying here is that the crew is focused on the production while there's some debate about like the release. Basically, while the release is being battled, like the higher ups are kind of talking about like if it is actually going to be made, is it not? The crew, our guys, are just on the ground level here, is kind of getting it made. Just they're not factoring that in too much. However, I do like that the reason we do. The one gripe I have against the film in places, mainly towards the end, is that we do kind of repeat ourselves a little.
Yeah, that's a gripe I've heard about the film in general, and but Dragon, on the positive side of things, though, I really do like how the film uses the device of like mounting up the tension. It's just like, it's like we all know what happens with this film. It doesn't get released, and we all see how passionate these people are. And Dragon, what I'm waiting for is the shoe to drop and for them to get into the how painful it was. And I think the documentary does a really good job of building up the betrayal.
Yeah, well, the thing with Mark Sykes is that not everyone has the same story. Like, he was hearing like he had no idea about the rumors, but some people did hear things about rumors, which probably colored kind of their betrayal. So again, it's like not everyone has the exact same story because they're focused on other things.
Sure. I love how Roger Corman, basically his role on the documentary, like he's kind of off on his own little island, you know what I mean? Like, much like he was in real life. Like, he's just kind of like, yeah, this, like, I don't know. It's like he is really kind of an interesting he's an interesting sort of, I don't know how to define his character. Like I said, I definitely think like his heart was in the right place with it at the time, like, wanting to put more money into it than any other of his productions, but it's still I don't know, it's still, there's just like such a nefarious element to Corman and his dealings with
yeah, it's hard to get a read on Corman because the thing they don't really get to in this, but again, it's kind of interesting they left it vague, is that again, Corman, his name is forever attached to this film. It's Roger Corman's Fantastic Four, even though he didn't direct. A lot of people just assumed he directed before this thing came out, quite honestly, but
I assumed again he directed it.
Exactly, but still, this is the cheesiest moment from the movie to me.
Oh God!
Oh, look at you, the Fantastic Four. As many breaks as I will cut this film, I can't. Just the ridiculousness of that line. I'm sorry. Okay, just
no.
Look at you.
Put that moment in context for me, Dragon. Like, how does that moment come up in the context of the movie?
So the Storms. Remember the creepy age thing I mentioned?
Yes.
So the Storms, the Storm's mother, Johnny and Sue Storm's mother runs like it's like a boarding house or a foster home. It's one of the two. It's like kind of like it's a house that has like many rooms in for people to stay in. So the point is like she runs this, and basically like years later they come back just to establish, they know Reed and Ben when they do a Dr. Doom origin in the beginning.
Right. Okay.
Later we see him with grown up Sue and Johnny, and they go off on the origin of the thing, and in doing that, that's where we get that shot of all of them going out the door to presumably the origin.
So basically, the mother names them the Fantastic Four before anything even goes down.
Essentially, yes.
That makes it like 10 times funnier, honestly. Oh man.
Yeah. Again, I gotta tell you, just of all the settings, I'm sorry, the last thing I'll say about the age thing is I don't want to dwell on it too much, because again, it was a weird kind of discrepancy in like adapting it, but it's again, it was like in the same location too, just to emphasize the creepiness of Reed Richards and this younger Sue Storm and Johnny Storm, and now again, like in the same location years later, and now she's of legal age.
Oh man!
Again, so let's not dwell on that any further. So
of course.
Again, let me just in case, so I don't forget, I want to mention this about Alex Hyde White. Well, the reason I love Alex Hyde White so much in this, aside from the fact he's got personality, he's got really cool lines, as a character, he's really doing it for me. And the fact that he's showing some teeth, he's showing some, I'm not happy with this, I'm not afraid to say anything about it. But in addition to that, I love it. Touches me so much that he was touched by the Reed Richards character. He connected to Reed Richards as a character, as he mentions later on. It got him through a tough time in his life. He's going through a divorce, going through some really dark stuff. The fact that he really, all of them were invested in doing the best job they could, but he actually formed a bond with his character, kind of like, not in the same vein, but honestly, to me, he sounds like an excellent Reed Richards. He is everything I kind of imagine Reed Richards to be, quite honestly. Mm-hmm. It's kind of like how we have like Robert Downey Jr. or Ryan Reynolds kind of associate with the character. I'm not saying it's like as iconic as that, but it's still just in a way of like you being touched fundamentally by a character like that.
And like even before the production really got underway, like the crew was gelling, and he was kind of like the leader of the, just a very natural leader.
Again, just becoming his character, and years later, just kind of really identifying with it. Yeah, I've looked in this character. I think he's really interesting. Mm-hmm. And also, we basically have what I like to call the Point Richmond era of the Fantastic Four. They have the condemned studio where they shot, which is essentially kind of like in Pixar and Disney, where they have the Point Richmond locations. I love this
story. Yeah.
Which are really kind of lousy. Like they have reused sets from Carnivore.
Also reminds me of Termite Terrace.
Yeah. Yeah, it's condemned city. They have like a cat that eats the rats.
Probably some of the more interesting and like amusing and fascinating parts of old school Hollywood are like these movie studios that are like yay close to falling apart.
Yeah. Again, these guys aren't in the position of like Michael Keaton where he can laugh himself in the bat suit. They're in the position of one guy's in a metal tin can. He's got to walk around all day, and the other ones out there they're filming this, and the guys behind the camera. They have like rats and cats going after rats behind them.
Oh God! Right.
While they're shooting all this stuff, they reuse old sets. They got to like add cups and stuff to it. Mm-hmm. I do like this Carnosaur thing, though, by the way. This like kind of these little stone dividers. I think they look cool.
Yeah, Yeah, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
I'm saying they look very kind of Star Tours-esque. When the doors open, the Star Tours.
Right. Anyways, I do like this whole, like as someone who's tried some grassroots filmmaking myself, I can relate to like taking one location and like switching a few things around to make it look like something else. And, of course, granted, I didn't do nearly as good of a job as these people did. And I'm sure these people don't do nearly as good of a job as professional crews do with sets. But,
So it's clever filmmaking on a budget. You got to give them that.
Totally.
Really clever. So again, Chris Gore here, you'll notice, in addition to that Fantastic Four thing he's got like a 60s Batman bust, phone, and a bat fridge. So this guy has my approval.
Oh yeah.
No, but in general, I've always like kind of like Chris Gore when he's popped up and things. He's popped up not only in the greatest fan film ever made, he's been in People vs. George Lucas. He's been in a few things like.
It makes me nostalgic for the days of like a story breaking in magazines as opposed to the internet. Because I'm just old enough to really remember that before the internet was like, before social media and, like people break things on Twitter and stuff like that. Like Entertainment Weekly and other publications like that, Dragon. Like I remember seeing the picture of Alfred Molina as Doc Ock, and the arms and everything, and him on the side of that building. And that was, like a cover story fold out in Entertainment Weekly, and I was just like, oh my God, like. So anyways, like, I relate to this guy on that level. I really do love the fan magazine quality to it, and I love how he was just so devoted to this franchise, but at the same time he's like the onlooker who's kind of like, he's kind of like the
he can see the traffic light going out as the cars are traveling through. He sees the train wreck approaching.
Right. So,
it's like, again, I love that he represents the fan perspective in that regard. Like, again, he's excited to see, oh my God, they pulled him right from the screen, but unfortunately the story and everything's not really holding up to represent that like it is in the comic. It's kind of like Michael Uslan with Batman. He was so excited to see Batman being adapted into live action, the 60s Batman show, but he wasn't like, oh my God, that's not the Batman I know. That's not the Batman from the 40s. That's not the dark kind of crusading vigilante. And that's why we have 89, because of Michael Uslan.
Exactly.
Again, let's not forget, without Uslan, we have no kind of dark Batman. Mm-hmm. It's Uslan and Frank Miller. It gives us the dark Batman.
Frank Miller, most definitely, yeah.
Anyway, of course, they're scrutinizing the costumes here. just love how Jay Underwood loses his crap, but he's just like talking about the the spacesuits and they look like t-shirts on like tinfoil t-shirts.
I think Chuck would approve.
Okay, now yes, he would. Now, Tiki, this is the last shot of the movie, by the way.
Yeah,
The waving arm.
Yeah,
They end on
yeah.
the famous Fantastic Four wedding. So they kind of adapt three Fantastic Four stories in the movie. It's the first. It's the first issue. It's Doctor Doom, and it's the wedding at the very end.
Yeah, that waving arm dragon, I don't know. Like, obviously it's fake looking, but to me there's something admirable and cheesy about it that I just kind of love.
Okay, now this is the most important part of the film, I wager. One of the most important.
Let's zero in
at least for me,
right
most
now,
memorable.
sure.
So the Stan Lee revelation to me, this is where I'd like, oh my god, this film's really interesting. I gotta see what happens next. It's like, again, Stan Lee as sort of the villain of the piece. That's astounding.
Yeah, and I can see it, Dragon. I can see it. And you know what? I really think there would be a huge interest in seeing that book. We have the author of the book in here, I think.
Yes, again, I'm dying to read Sean Howe's book. His book is like Marvel: The Untold Story.
Yeah, Dragon, I'm telling you, I've read it, and that book would make such a great documentary.
I'm going to read that, and I want to see that book. I want them both. I want everything.
You want it?
But,
okay, you want that, you want the documentary, and then you also want the biopic starring Bryan Cranston.
Is that so much to ask? So let me weigh in on the Stan Lee thing here. So the Michael Bay Smith again. So I feel so bad for Michael Bay Smith. It's like he's like kicking a puppy here when he learns that Stan Lee just then kind of undercuts all the praise he gave him.
Yeah, this is just like
here. I'm going to defend Stan a little bit.
Okay, defend him.
I say this. Here's what I say. Just based on the fact that we have video evidence. This is why I can say this. Is that objectively, I think Stan is just being brutally honest in that he's being brutally honest in that in his knowledge, like, again, he wasn't involved in this film, so again, to his knowledge, like the last one before we get control, we get input on the film, so he's praising like we're going to have more involvement in the next ones to come. This one we don't have much involvement. I'm not expecting much. He's not saying it's bad, but it's kind of not a big morale booster. He's kind of impartial on. He's just saying, well, I'm not really. He's not saying it's going to be bad. He's not saying I'm not expecting much from it.
I hear you. I also.
It's not a confidence booster, but it's not him.
I mean, keep in mind, Dragon. Keep in mind, this is a small snippet of the Comic-Con footage, so there could be other things that he said that were more biting that just didn't make the cut.
I don't imagine Stan Lee would do that, but all the biting kind of the quotes that we get from Stan Lee there, like in the black and white thing, that's from 2005 film. That's like he been asked about it during the 2005 film. And I would figure, here's my figuring of it, is that it might be Stan just kind of going with the story. Like he doesn't know the ins and outs that we're learning here. I just figure he's just going with like whatever he was told by Avi or Rod or someone of like what happened with that if he's asked about it. Like, okay, so yeah, the film was never intended to be released, and it's just kind of the story. So I assume that's like again he knows that they sold the rights. That's what he knows. So we don't know how much Stan Lee knows. Again, if I read the Sean Howe book, maybe I know more about it, but that's just what's presented in the film here. It's what I'm taking away from it.
Well, it's interesting because the Sean Howe book, it very much deals with the narrative of Stan Lee being the face of Marvel versus the heavy lifter of Marvel.
Yeah.
And that's kind of like the thesis statement of it. Like basically Stan Lee basically is like the public persona. Whereas,
which sounds fascinating.
Yeah. I don't want to give away too much, but again, I think it'd make a great documentary.
And it's past, but I just want to give it a little bit of mention. This the Alex Hyde White again. That donut monologue of his is really so chilling. It's not really monologue, just that little thing. It's like again, so it's like him talking down to Stan Lee. It's man, that hurts. It's so well delivered. Just him saying, for God's sake, he'll.
Oh, you have a good time on our set, Stan. You like it? Yeah.
Do you think he actually brought donuts? You think he was just saying he brought donuts?
Oh, I definitely think Stan brought donuts.
I would like to think Stan brought donuts.
I mean, I don't think you would just make something like that up. I could totally see Stanley like, hey,
I love that he says
we have to give these guys some donuts. It's probably going to be a crappy movie, but they deserve a morale booster.
I love that he just says it so matter-of-factly. He brought the donuts.
Right.
He brought the donuts once. Just, oh, God, it's so... Again, I don't want to villainize Stanley. I tried to, like, look for as much evidence as we can on this sort of thing. So, again, based on this, I can't quite go with that, but I see we're definitely, while it's not a morale booster, it's really... Imagine how disheartening it is to have, like, the big head honcho Marvel say... Again, he, like, pats, like a Bailey Smith on the shoulder saying, hey,
you're a great thing. You're doing a very good job, young man.
Before we get Michael Chiklis, I think he's a really good representation of the thing. He's a good Ben Grimm.
Yeah.
So I don't think Stan's making that up. I just to, like, spare his feelings, I guess. I'm still going with that. I don't think he's just BSing him. I think he means that.
All right, so Dragon, we're about at the halfway point in the film, roughly, and this is where the film kind of starts to go into the grassroots marketing narrative, which is probably one of the most fascinating things about it for me personally.
Yeah. So yeah, I mean, we had.
I mean, not necessarily the marketing right now, but it's more so.
Right now, they finished filming. They're doing the after the effects work in the edit.
And it's definitely grassroots, though. I love the stories of they're working on other projects, and then they're
sneaking the film
right on after hours. Like that's great. That's like some Steven Spielberg like sneaking onto the Universal lot type stuff.
Yeah. Exactly. Again, they're squeezing every dime to shoot extra scenes under the table, as we're going to see.
Oh my God! Right.
It's like, again, like on the side. This is, you're right, Dave. It's absolutely kind of the grassroots thing. We get some cool storyboards. Again, I'm loving these storyboards. It basically, again, it's cool looking storyboards, but we have these really bad effects. It doesn't make for a strong combination because first we have like optical, and then of course we get Mr. Film coming in. Still, even Mr. Film's somewhat improvement. It's still not saving the film.
Sure.
Again, it's really got the flame on effect. I'm sorry. But yeah, it's again. I love how kind of personable it feels like. Again, you just need like that extra cash. So like, hey, come on, can you give me some film so I can shoot this scene on the side?
Yeah.
So I can shoot this Doom scene, so I can shoot like Ben Grimm in the streets, and like we have to film it under light, so we can get like the exposure up. Again, I love that, just how these little the specificities of it, all the details.
Now, what they're talking about now, this special.
Yeah, this is what I'm talking about. The effects. Yeah, this is the effects and the storyboard thing I'm talking about here. Again, storyboard looks like comic book panels, like storyboards tend to do, versus kind of the execution.
And this is exactly why I really don't want to go into the effects industry because, frankly, it's like I could study something like visual effects as much as I want, but when it comes to practically using it, I know I'm never going to be like a great visual effects guy. So it's just like, I honestly, I kind of feel bad for the guy they're talking about to a certain extent because
You call that a water effect?
Yeah, exactly. Like I could see like, well, I'm trying, guys, it's like, I'm sorry. I don't know.
I do kind of like the 444 in the Baxter Building, by the way. That's kind of nice. I think it's from the actual comic, by the way. Like the fours on the Baxter Building. So nice little attention to detail, if that's the case. So I think right now we're going to get into kind of these extra scenes they've shot.
In some angles and some shots, I think the stretching on Mr. Fantastic looks pretty impressive.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Again, like let's make it clear here that again the film obviously it's not a masterpiece by any stretch. Let's be honest. But again, let's be fair. I mean, compared to what they're working with, we do get some. It seems
I would wager to say it might be a better movie than the other Fantastic Four movies we've gotten.
I consider
like
that, but it's like I think that one's more consistent in the first act versus. It's like on the whole, I think this one's as good as that first act.
Okay.
It's kind of where I'm at. Like they kind of balance each other out in a way. I guess more on that a little bit, right? But yeah. So again, here's some of the extras. This is a hilarious story, by the way, when he discovers that was the other. Well, he discovers that I forget. Is it Mark or? Who? Oh yeah, I think it's Mark. Mark Sykes was in the Thing costume. Someone else in the Thing costume.
That's a fun reveal. I
love just
the desperation of like trying to find the lighting. Like you could see the desperation in the way they're shooting this. You know what I mean?
Yeah. I just love how they're breaking like kind of the format here as he's talking to him from across the way. Just like, that was you. So coming up, just to make sure I don't miss it, one of my one of my favorite elements, and this one talking about like kind of the film has redeeming qualities, and let's not forget that because again, these guys do essentially look like they're pulled from the comic. You got some good casting. Again, this film could have delivered. In theory, I'm not saying like with everything as it was. I'm saying with certain elements. Now, this scene right here. As Joe's kind of talking about the looping right now, it's about to play a clip and a few clips from this. I love the score and the aesthetics. And to me, the score and aesthetics are probably the best part of the movie. And these elements show the most potential for the film. That's what I'm getting at. These two elements, like, I think the score is really good. My favorite of the score is the Doom theme and the ending to the trailer. But again, I love the Doom theme in this thing where he kind of talks about,
from what I've heard,
hated you.
Yeah, from what I've heard, I think the score, the performances, the aesthetic of it, all really strong. I think the story and the pacing probably could have used some work.
Exactly, that's what I'm saying. Obviously, yeah, you're right. Absolutely, the story, and I think they could have used more takes. Because remember, they didn't get to rehearse this. I'm not saying the performances, the acting and the takes aren't bad necessarily, but I think they could have used a few more takes. Like it's like what we just saw, like kind of Reed just looking blankly at him in response to that. That's
right.
That's what I'm saying. It's like I'm not gonna fault the direction necessarily. I am gonna fault again. I think just more takes or more preparation for it. Because remember, it's like Kevin Smith shooting Clerks. They have to know their stuff and they have to kind of go into it. Just kind of, they don't have a lot of film to burn through. Is what I'm saying.
Mm-hmm.
You understand? But again, just looking at that scene out of context, bear in mind kind of the Reed Richards not really reacting to him that much, but still, just again, Joseph Colt acting his heart out with that excellent Doom score playing, like that.
Yeah, it's really interesting that he very much does have like the physical performance with Doom, that he was so limited, like having that mask covering him.
And again, that is the most real, that is the most faithful Doom costume you're going to find, because that's Doom from the comics. He's brought the life there. That's definitely what he looks like. And again, like we would update, I'm sure. Like again, me when I've talked about what I'd like to see in the fan, basically do an Iron Man suit with a green color scheme on it.
Yeah.
Well, again, not purely an Iron Man.
I really love the like the fluke, the blooper with the thing. Like, come on, guys, give them some room.
So there's David and Eric Wurst. They did again. They have a very sadly ironic name, but again, hey, this is the worst score ever.
Oh God.
But again, seriously, seriously, they have like kind of an ironic name, and that these guys really did good work, and again on a low budget. They had a 40-piece orchestra, and they made it work for them.
Yeah, and I think that's because like you can hear the passion in it. You know what I mean? Like you hear like I could totally see these guys like this isn't just some project that they're doing for a paycheck. This is their chance to make an imprint on a genre they love.
Yeah, exactly. And again, just all the potential we see in those scenes makes me think that, yeah, I mean, there's so much of this could have been something memorable and interesting,
Mm-hmm.
It's like, again, if you got these guys the right mind, they could deliver a really excellent Fantastic Four film.
I mean, it definitely goes back to that pitch at the end of the movie that I really would like to see for this thing.
Yeah, honestly, I'd love to see them do an animated. Let's do an animated Fantastic Four film, bring everyone in. Basically do a Return of the Caped Crusaders, but with this. Not exactly in the same style by any stretch, but do kind of like people have been talking about doing a comic of Death of Superman Lives. Like, let's adapt that story, but kind of do it right, and then do a little tongue-in-cheek.
Mm.
Here with this, I really love, and this is why I think Alex Highway is my favorite character in this, is because I love how he sticks up for Ole. He says, like, we all did a good job, we all had high hopes for things, but I think out of all of us, Ole deserved the opportunities that he would have been allotted after the film had been released. He deserved the most out of this film, and he didn't get it, and that's not right. Again, I love he's sticking up, again, very leadership-esque.
Yeah, because you got to consider, Dragon, like a lot of these cast members, like we see briefly in the documentary, and I can attest to this, they did go on to other things after this, and it was mostly through their connections with people like Roger Corman and willing to put them in other things, seeing the dedication they had. And, like someone on the same scale, like a director, he's not going to get that same sort of recognition in word of mouth, sort of like, hey, this guy, you know what I mean? It's just like, it's a slightly different, like, job market for directors instead of when it comes to actors.
I mean, you have to really wow someone as a director.
Right,
you have to really kind of wow someone in a film to really get your name known as a director. Otherwise, it's going to be the film's going to be remembered, like the studio's going to be remembered, not the director. Unless you do a really memorable job with it. So as I mentioned here, I love basically this section here. I like to call is kind of the build up for the storm that is coming. It's like they're all hopeful about everything that's to come here. And it's basically the result is like, what if it's kind of like what if Iron Man or the Raimi Spider-Mans didn't pan out? It's kind of like that build. Like again, they had hopes. Basically, they had Iron Man level hopes for this film. And imagine if like Iron Man didn't launch the MCU with Spider-Man, what if Spider-Man didn't deliver?
And we were just talking about, like the Doctor Strange by Wes Craven, Wesley Snipes being Black Panther. Like that could have potentially been the Marvel Cinematic Universe that the Fantastic Four movie launched. That would have been crazy.
Yeah. Yeah, now part of me kind of has to wonder. That's somewhat of a conspiracy element here, because again, at certain points in this marketing trip, kind of this goodwill marketing thing. I call it a goodwill thing because they said they're going all around promoting the thing, kind of like a goodwill trip. But it's it's basically they're going around promoting the film at Comic-Cons and stuff all over conventions. A lot of it's out of pocket, out of Alex High White and Michael Bailey Smith's pocket. Mainly Michael Bailey Smith's pocket. He had like some $12 grand in the marketing.
Right.
And he'd do it again, which is one of those qualities I love about the guy. That he doesn't regret. Like he'd do it all over again. Spend 12 minutes, it was a good time. 12 grand. Part of me wonders, like a lot of that was out of the actor's pocket, but I gotta wonder if the promotion, like in building up that, hey, there was a trailer made, everything, like there was an actual trailer attached to things, like, hey, this film is going to be seen by people. You have to wonder if some of that is like proof that, hey, there is a film being made, so they can appease, like, as like maybe they had the film to produce a trailer.
Well, of course, so that they got the very Katzenberg-esque tactic of, from Corman, probably the most nefarious thing Corman does here is, him getting a bigger paycheck because the film actually did see itself all the way through to production and post-production and all that.
Again, part of you has to wonder, like, how much of that is for Corman, how much of that is just to get the film done, or how much of that is just to, again, the trailer being kind of the proof in the pudding that, hey, we have an end product here, it's all ready and in the can, so if you want to do anything about this, you got to pull out now. So again, unfortunately, the actors and then the directors and our crew here, they're no idea what the storm that's coming because of this. And again, it's like they're promoting this thing thinking it's going to come out. Like there's no like we're lying to people. They're very
right.
Yeah, it's kind of like the ultimate part.
Dragon. Like I listen to podcasts like with people who are experts on this kind of stuff, and even they'll make the mistake of saying that everyone involved in the Fantastic Four movie knew that it wasn't going to come out. And I'm like, no, and this documentary is just such a good vehicle for, changing that notion, like changing that misconception. It wasn't just like a goof that people were just basically being paid to, to hold off on the rights. It was like something that, it was like a long con in a lot of respects, played by a certain number of individuals on a lot of people who put blood, sweat, tears, and hard work and passion into this thing.
Yeah, now Alex Iwat just mentioned the thing about how we identified Mr. Fantastic, and again, it's kind of building that tragic thing of like, oh my God, this guy, Mr. Fantastic, this character he's playing, he's getting him out of a really tough spot in his life. It's really lifting him up, and we know it's not going to pan out for him. That's really sad.
I love the idea of transporting the Thing costume everywhere they go.
Yep. Again, paying for the suit, but not the actors.
Of course. What does that say about the whole situation?
Yeah. And again, just the fact that nowadays you'd be charging an arm and a leg for these pictures that they're giving out to people, and they just gave these away for free.
Right.
Again, Alex Elwood had 1,000 stills, and he gave away everything but 150 of them. He has 150 of them left. So again, he gave away all those. Mm-hmm. Really nice. Like now, if you have to pay for those, anyway. Yeah. Of course, at the Comic-Cons, as we're about to see, we had the cool trailer being flung around. Of course, the cool trailer with the ending with the fake mole man.
Yeah, which is a really kind of like, it is very 90s, like ending on this like sort of like whimsical, like kind of cryptic line. But
I just love the music behind it. Though. Again, I think the score is just really powerful. Mm-hmm. Again, the trailer is doing the trailer kind of embodies what I'm talking about the movie. It looks representative of the Fantastic Four on the surface. It's again good cast. It's it's looking like it's really shaping up, and it sounds again. It has the intense tonally. It's right on the money.
Sure,
it would seem it's right on the money. What you want a Fantastic Four film, but it's not. Yeah. Of course, the end result no one saw the end result, but again, it's like right here. It's really a cool, hype-worthy trailer. It's clobbering time. The things going to town. That's really cool. And we end on that whole that big build of you're right though, that really cryptic quote, and then the whole just that excellent score.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and of course, it's one in a long line of trailers that we see them, we get really hyped up, then we see the movie, and it's like, oh. Yeah.
Then I love this. Chris Gore's going on how Michael would do the whole fan. Was it going to suck? He said, no, it's going to be awesome. It's going to be freaking awesome.
This is a random observation, but I really like the look of the toucan on the old Comic-Con logo, or at least the logo for that year.
I like the 90s Cyclops in the cosplay.
Yeah.
And here's the thing we're talking about. Here's the end. And such things as dreams are made of. That's a profound thing in relation to this project.
I know, right?
And again, then we get that really awesome, it's so intriguing, the music. I'm sorry, I keep dwelling, but it's that mixing with that super meta quote.
Well, I like how that's definitely a moment in this documentary that kind of does both.
And literally that moment then ushers us into the bow out, the big stomach dropping reveal.
Yeah, of course.
Because right after that, then we go into the big tragic blow. Again, the tragedy strikes here at the Mall of America premiere, because they say that trailer bit represents kind of the end of the marketing thing.
Dragon, I also want to point out Mall of America in Minneapolis, home to our good friends at Super Academy. Oh, yes.
Yes. Again, folks, that's Super Academy.
At hotchocolatemedia.net.
Because .coms are a lie.
I love how blunt that was. .coms are a lie. Anyways.
.nets of the future.
Oh God.
So so be 500 screens all over the place. Again, it sounds like this thing's really going to happen. To me, I know it's probably not going down like this, but to me, the way it sounds like they're in the theater and right before someone's like, okay, no, can't do it. We got to take everyone's lining up on the outside, and then basically someone walks. I'm just saying the way they kind of they have the image of the outside of the mall, outside of the theater. It keeps making me think that. Mm-hmm. Oh wow! It's right before everyone's lined up to go in. Someone just pulled the the negative.
Of course, I think it was probably not it was probably more likely about a week in advance or a few days.
I'm just saying that's how I'm picturing it in my head to make it sound more dramatic. To be honest,
but I do think the movie does a good job of kind of planting that image in your mind's eye, though. So I'll give it credit for that.
Especially when he goes on saying if he could be Jesse James or Alex White. This is one of my favorites. This is why I love Alex White in this movie. Again, he has these great descriptions of things where he says, if I could have been Jesse James or Robin Hood in this movie, I could have done something to really help. It was going to be this moment. Mm-hmm. That guy's such a good actor. I want to see him in more things, to be honest. We have seen him in a few things. He was in Catch Me If You Can. He was the guy who told Frank Abagnale you have to pick your mother or your father in divorce. That was him.
Oh, gotcha. Okay.
He was in Dexter as well. He was
yay for him.
He had a bit part in Dexter, but okay. Now he's talking about Chris Columbus here. It's interesting is that Chris Columbus was in the
Columbus.
Now here's the thing. Of course, Chris Columbus is very, very famous for Mrs. Doubtfire and Home Alone and various other
Harry Potter down the line.
I believe Jingle All the Way might have been his too. I know he was involved. I think he directed that too once.
I don't think that's the case, but we'll look.
Well, I know he was involved. I don't know if he definitely produced it. So Columbus was actually considered, I believe for this reason, Columbus was considered to direct the 2005 one, the 2005 version. He was in the running to direct
I think he actually would have done a really good job, probably a better job than Tim Story would have done.
Well, the cool thing with Columbus is he can tell the family stories. So that's why he would be a decent choice. Yeah. At the same time, though, again, it's he was given credit solely to kind of win points with them down the line when they could ask him to direct the winning version in their mind.
Really, it basically turns, again, all the blood, sweat, tears, and passion into poker chips.
It's like that reveal of
poker chips.
Basically, it's a Vegas reveal, Tiki. It's a Vegas reveal in that, hey, you're rooting for the guy, and at the last minute, the pit boss gives the dealer the nod, and then the guy loses all of his money. It's the reveal that you can bet against the house as much as you want, but in the end, the house is going to win.
Right.
These guys are
right.
finding out the house is going. When you've been playing your heart out, you've been rooting for it at the end, you're not supposed to win.
Yeah.
Yep. Then we have one of the best stories coming up of the thing here. We have I love this, the Fantastic Forsaken. That's such a perfect, that is a perfect description of what happens. Of course, these are the films we eventually got, Fantastic Four and Rise of the Silver Surfer. Both have their redeeming qualities, as does this film. Let's be frank.
Sure.
Again, all these Fantastic Four films have their redeeming qualities, even the most recent one, the first act.
First act, yeah.
So I'm saying, again, take away
basically everything when they're not the Fantastic Four.
Is honestly, I gotta tell you though, even rewatching it, believe me, not rewatching it the concept, just even rewatching the reviews of it, watching reviews of it, and rewatching the film. Honestly, when you really scrutinize it, in the first act, honestly, it's the origin. Origin's the only the part where they go to they get the powers. That's the only cool part of that movie. Let's be honest. Them getting the powers in the aftermath of the horror of their discovery.
The aftermath, I think, is very well done. Yeah.
That's what I'm saying. I'm saying like the whole power thing in general is when the horror show of how they get and discover the powers. That's the main crux of the new one. Then of course everything goes really south afterwards, but let's not dwell on that.
Oh boy.
So then we have the Prince story. Oh, this is great. The stealing the Prince story.
Right.
I just love this. This to me, this was one of my other favorite parts of the movie here. This is where I love this character of Ole Sassoon here. Is where he's saying, "Look, we put our heart, sweat, and tears in this thing. We gotta take it back, man. We're not gonna let them take this away from us." And this is the idea that they're.
I've got that Sicilian blood in me, man.
Yeah, without even thinking about it, they just like this isn't right. We gotta essentially break in. Like I can imagine them as they're describing, like almost like they're using a flashlight in a dark room, looking through files, looking through film canisters, looking for the fantastic, looking for their film.
Mm-hmm.
It's him and the editor. It's him and Glenn Garland. So I love this. I just love how descriptive this is. It paints such a great picture in the head, doesn't it?
Oh yeah.
And again, it's like it's the underdog. Again, we know they're not going to win this, but it's like, oh, if only.
Right. Which again, I think this documentary does a very good job of is kind of like having that inevitability be the black cloud hanging over the narrative that doesn't ever quite get resolved. But you just Yeah, go ahead.
I'm sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off.
No, go ahead. It's fine.
So speaking of inevitability, it's kind of funny that. What they went through here, just kind of trying to get the film out at any cost, they kind of went through in the making of this movie. They didn't get the okay, so they put this out, and so far, no ramifications. They used clips from the film that's not supposed to be seen. So, I mean, they're using the bootlegged footage, which may be the technicality, or Marvel just doesn't, or Fox just doesn't care enough. So the point
it's just like the official, like it's the only officially released footage of this thing, essentially.
Yeah, it's a question. They never got the official okay, so they were just kind of waiting for it to be taken out. That's why I have mine on. While this is available on Amazon Prime, I have the physical. I told you earlier, I have the thing I got in the mail. I have the actual DVD, so or else they're not taking that away. So I mean, even if they do
house by house, Dragon,
they're gonna have to try.
Oh God,
it's gonna be like Home Alone.
It's like Avi Aaron shows up like. Dragon, we need the copy, Dragon. Give us the copy. Anyways.
Not happening.
Oh, God.
Anyway. So, yeah, so we get this, but you see what I'm saying, though? Again, it's like kind of so far so good. So I'm going to assume this, Fox and Marvel just they reached kind of a cool acceptance of it. You know what? We put them through the ringer, let them have it.
I think it almost might be also kind of like a Disney versus Escape from Tomorrow type situation where if they do anything about it, they'll kind of like just look like the bad guys.
Yeah, maybe that's...
Yeah, it may be a combination of the two. Like, yeah, let them have it. And also, like, if we do anything about it, it'd probably result in bad press. So, yeah.
And
so...
Now, this is nice. They're kind of talking about Eichinger here. Eichinger is, he was nice. He... how he did explain it to him what was going on. Now, at the same time, initially, we have two bits of Eichinger in story here. The first bit is like he was talking about how he sat him down, he explained to him very professionally what happened, and it was a really crushing reveal because essentially what he's saying here is Eichinger knew the whole time, but he couldn't tell Ole, or else would have brought down morale, and they wouldn't have tried to get the thing made. So again, it's like he's revealing that I lied to you, and that wasn't right, but that's what happened.
Right.
And later on, he has a really nice thing where Eichinger does reward as many people as he can in the process. He gave them other work, especially Ole. We'll get to.
Oh, God.
This bit here, of course. This is the famous clip that's been used. Even Conan O'Brien used this when, like, the Fantastic Four film was going around. Like the 2015 one. Basically, at some point, he used like this clip just to play the "What have you done?" Like the tease, like here's some footage from the new Fantastic Four movie. What have you done?
Oh, God. Oh, Conan. Conan doesn't still do the Walker Texas Ranger thing, does he?
I have no idea.
Okay, well, probably not. Probably not. Back in the day, man. Back in the day. Anyways.
Yeah. Again, I like these framing devices. Like the whole why all this mystery. It's a good framing device for like let's bring up the question: why all this mystery? Why hide it?
And I think in that nature, it's definitely it kind of gets the duplicitous nature of Corman and Avi Arad and company, and kind of I love the moral gray that's established here.
Yeah. Yeah, but of course, we hear kind of everyone got the shaft except Roger Corman because he got his payday. He essentially got the budget of both of the movie and not getting the movie. He got $2 million,
which is just like 2017 working class in a nutshell. To get political for one moment.
Yep. Just so I guess we don't miss it. I mean, you want to talk about Avi Arad here because if you're gonna have they're gonna breach on Avi Arad's rise to fame with the X-Men animated series and just kind of how he Avi Arad broke into the biz through Toy Biz and the X-Men animated series. That's really where he got into things. And of course, that branched off into X-Men. He's
always been kind of like this weird, enigmatic, like kind of roguish figure in Marvel for me, even back in the day.
The best comparison I have is he's like the more successful, smarter version of the Soulkinds from the Superman. I say that predominantly because of the foreign thing, because they kind of sound similar. I'm sorry, they do. It's I'm sorry. So he does sound. Avi Arad does sound somewhat like the Soulkinds.
How dare you? I'm sorry. No, I'm kidding. Anyways.
but so I like the idea he's much smarter than the Soulkinds in a business capacity because he made a lot smarter calls. He didn't jerk around the actors, but again, Arad again to me. So the Arad thing doesn't bother me because Arad is kind of he's revealed to be our big mustache twirly. Again, somewhat of our bad guy. Again, in the grand scheme, he gave us the MCU because of these actions. Which, bear in mind, of course, Kevin Feige more specific.
It goes back to the whole sacrificial lamb thing that I brought up earlier on.
Yes. So again, just to be clear, of course, Kevin Feige really is responsible for the MCU. But I'm saying we don't get the films that lead down the road to the MCU without Avi Arad. And I love how Sean Howe, again, this is my favorite thing about Sean Howe, how he's using the capacity of he's the historian, he's the Leonard Maltin of this thing. He's
the Malt.
He's telling us. Again, he's filling us in on like these really specific details of the climate of the comic culture at the time for Marvel, and of course he's the kind of leading us through Avi Arad, who I imagine Tiki in the book is another interesting character, right?
Oh yeah, definitely.
I could only imagine because Avi Arad again very talked about in the Marvel films,
sure.
Pre-MCU.
Like the book is like more kind of focused on Stan Lee versus Jack Kirby, like that drives a lot of the narrative. But yeah, Avi Arad is definitely a player in the book.
Yeah. And basically, we hear the Arad. We have kind of again the two revelations of the Arad is that Arad is the guy who kind of gave the order to like buy the film, make sure it doesn't get released. That's essentially Arad, which makes him somewhat of our actual bad guy. Versus Stanley's just he's Stanley's the face of it. Where Arad's the actual kind of the puppeteer of it.
Sure.
And again, they're both making decisions that feed into that sacrificial lamb thing you're bringing up, TV. So no one's technically the bad guy, but they are doing things that hurt our underdogs here, which makes them feel to us the bad guy.
And I do like how the film does kind of have that kind of circular way of kind of dealing with the grief of it. You know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
we go through the grief of it, we go through the shock of it, but we also go through the acceptance and ultimately overcoming it and kind of embracing it in a way towards the end.
Yeah, yeah. Again, everyone kind of has their way of processing
Mhm.
it, and with the rod, the
Which is
burning
basically
story.
like it
Yeah,
kind of makes the last 15 minutes or so of this movie into like one sort of like guidance counseling, like group counseling session in a way. You know what I mean?
in
Everyone's
a
just
way.
like, yeah, it happened. We all have to kind of get over it. We all have to talk about it. Yeah.
Again, like right here, again, I never would have imagined this shot being used in a negative way. And oh, there's Rothman. There's the guy that sewed Deadpool's mouth shut on the right there.
Kill him with fire.
That guy. There's it, folks. The guy with the glasses on the very right of the shot that just passed. That's Tom Rothman.
Oh man.
That's the man.
Oh, man.
Get the Rothman.
I don't think we're gonna be seeing like a Marvel style Star Wars celebration where that guy comes out and he gets like welcomed with a warm reception, like hating.
It's Rothman. Get him.
Oh man.
Anyway, so by the way, I just love kind of how they feed into that. Like they have Avi Arad. They did with Stanley too. Just say Stanley and Avi Arad. They politely declined not to be on this thing. We contacted them.
Which makes sense.
Yeah, but still, I kind of like the cryptic thing for Arad. Like I'm not saying it's like not super cryptic because you understand why. But I'm saying like, kind of like that. They place it just the right moment.
Cryptic. I just, again, I kind of wish they would have at least sown the seeds of him being in the background of this a little earlier in the documentary, so it would have played more like a natural mystery. I don't know.
Well, I don't know. It's somewhat.
Nitpick.
That's fair. I'm just saying. I think the way it kind of plays with the Rod is that here's this up and comer at Marvel who's really rising around this time. So it might be kind of like for all. It would have been nice to clarify if Arad was there the whole time, or if he kind of rose to power as they were making the thing. That's the one thing I would like to know.
Yeah, like maybe kind
That's
of like maybe bring up like all. I don't know. I do think Arad was an important player at the time in the Marvel movie circuit. So again, this is maybe like the biggest nitpick I have with this movie. Overall, I think they did what they could with not having Arad, himself to interview. Of course, I think this movie would have been. I think a lot of depth would have been added to this movie if we would have gotten the other side of the coin. If we would have gotten people like Stan Lee and Rod to weigh in on it, you know what I mean? So that is sort of. I don't want to say it's a missed opportunity because I'm sure they tried their darndest to get those people, but it is kind of like it's like I'm sorry. Go ahead.
So just a few things. We had the Eichinger Don Perignon story, which is really nice. How we just we kind of bomb about him. The fact that Eichinger rewarded people for all the grief they went through. He got them got Oli's movie and got Alex White a few parts here and there. Mm-hmm. It was really Corman as well. So again, I love the nice bittersweet. It's less bittersweet, more kind of it's a hopeful ending. It's that our guys did get rewarded in some capacity, and I love that Joseph Cole ushers us into kind of this. Not epilogue, but our happy ending. That Joseph Culp Ellerson and the great irony of the Fantastic Four is that it's remembered more for not coming out than it would have been had it come out. I love that he addressed that. I love that he recognizing. As much as these champions doing again, he has to acknowledge it. I love that.
Yeah, which I mean, it's definitely true because I mean, look at the whole semantics of I think way more people look back fondly on this version of the Fantastic Four than say 1990 Captain America.
True. I mean, this one has more memorable gags in it because Captain America basically boils down to 2 gags and an Italian Red Skull. That's really what Captain America boils down to.
Captain America's a train wreck.
Just again, they emphasize the 90s, Captain.
Well, yes, Dragon.
Yes.
The only movie that's actually called just Captain America. So.
Right. So, by the way, just because the last thing with the Rod, it's going to be brought up again, is that the whole Rod went around. Basically, he found out he heard there was going to be a screen, so he made sure he bought the print and reportedly destroyed it, which I hope is not the case, as well as everyone's
kind of parallel to to the
George Lucas saying he would destroy every copy of Star Wars Holiday Special.
Which, of course, like the great hypocritical irony of George Lucas being one of the staunch defenders of preserving black and white film.
Yeah. Yeah.
Anyways.
And I love this. Just the origin. This was a great reward we did have in this thing. You never would have known this unless you watched this thing. That the origin of the bootleg, that Yoli just wanted a copy of this bootleg that he got, or that he came across, and that was then bootlegged into everything else.
And it was a great, just kind of like, viral, just like spreading it to his friends, who spread it to 3 other friends.
Which now is like free on YouTube all over the place. Again, I love how I love that we isolated to the origin point with you got a copy, and then some average shows just kind of leaked it online. Well, not only they leaked it at Comic-Cons, they leaked it on VHS tapes, which made it to VHS tapes and DVDs, which made it to Comic-Con, and then now have updated to YouTube.
Mm-hmm. Thank God for YouTube.
And I love at the end here what we're kind of talking about is that in the end, like we're asking again, we're seeing like different perspectives that people have. Like they're asked, like, do you is it a conspiracy? And here's the burning thing with the rod. Which again, I'm going to agree with Jay Under. I hope is not true. I hope that no one has a disrespect for them. They're going to burn it.
Yeah, I love how passionate these people get about, like, if you work in film, you preserve film. You know what I mean? I love how that's kind of like it's crossing a line to say that you're going to burn film.
Yeah. So, like, in the end, the kind of questions are arisen, like, like, was the film ever intended to be released or not? And I kind of agree to a point that I don't think it's as much as a conspiracy, but it's definitely an injustice to some really nice people.
I think the chips in a poker game analogy kind of, like, I don't know. Sacrificial lamb,
like
chips in a poker game.
Yeah.
It's all metaphors and analogies that these people probably weren't even thinking at the time, but I think looking back on it, putting it into context, I think those are the 2 big metaphors I come to: the poker chips, and then I'm sorry, I'm looping around myself. Go ahead.
Yeah, the betting against the house analogy. Yes. Yeah, so it's like a conspiracy, not so much. Again, basically at the beginning, we kind of led to, okay, this might be kind of like a conspiracy because, like, kind of the last thing we didn't hear about, like, was the film ever intended to be made or released or not? And it's maybe not so much a conspiracy of no, it was supposed to be released the whole time, but again, it's injustice. Some really nice people who now have told their story, have been able to tell their story. In some way, this film not getting released and decisions made in the long run, paid off and got us, the MCU and all the faithfulness that we're getting now, they intended to do way back in the day.
Sure.
And I love how Alex boils this down to, giving this film a third act. So I just love that kind of that boiling it down to, this film needs a good ending, needs a happy ending, basically needs to be seen by people regularly.
Yeah, so what do you think of the pitch of, like, the double disc? One disc is just completely like the original film stock, and then the next.
I'm in agreement that we do this all the time, and we might as well. I mean, basically, again, this one's like it's tied up in a rights issue. It's the only reason we haven't done it, because we see that done all the time with films. Like, they'll release like sets where you have the new film and the old film. Like, they'll release like packs of like 4 discs in a set. That's what they'll do. Might as well do that for this one. There's no harm. It could be like a bonus feature on a disc where it's like an hour-and-a-half movie.
It'd be a way to sell Fan 4 stick.
Exactly. That's what I'm saying. Like, the 2 most. Which one's better?
Right. You really think Fan 4 stick is so bad? Well, you be the judge yourself.
Yeah, I mean, you know what boils down for me with this? Just kind of because you're getting to the end here. I mean, mistakes are made in film all the time. What's rare is when they're rectified.
Business. It's a freaking Shark Tank.
Yes, I mean, the mistakes are made all the time, but what's rare is when they're rectified. The Fantastic Four still needs that one way or another. I mean, these days anything's possible. So maybe one of these days in the future they will get that release date. The release of this film, at the very least, I think Fantastic Four still could be done right in the future.
Mm-hmm.
The point, the fans for I'm saying is, like, we need to amend this mistake of getting we need to get the Fantastic Four done right on film and without like any controversy, without any like some without the mistakes. We need it done right. We need it respected. We need it honored in a way.
Sure.
These people did the best they could under impossible circumstance. They took a lot of crap because like that was so bad it was never released. Now we've heard their side. Now we've heard what actually led to this. The next generation will I'm sorry, I was saying, like, yeah, I love that the next generation, their kids and everything, respect their take on the film, even though no one's seen it. Like, they just like, respect it for, like, these guys put their heart and souls into it. At least someone appreciates it. All their families appreciate it. Like, Joseph Culp's son dresses up like Dr. Doom at conventions. You know, we got Michael Bailey Smith's sons don't watch the new movies because their father was the original thing.
Right.
Yeah, like right here, that's what Smith's talking about right now. It's like, yeah, they're staying protective of Dad. Really sweet. Again, in the end, it didn't work out, but they've had a heck of a story to tell, and now they've kind of set the record straight. I think that's really amenable. You know, like now that there's no discrepancies. Now it's not going to be the whole. It was so bad it wasn't released. No, it was released because they didn't put enough effort into it. Well, not effort. It's like because they didn't.
I also kind of like the we've made the Superman metaphor before of, you know, like Nick Cage and the costume and that relating to it.
Yeah,
Dragon. I think in general, what it boils down to is just the look of the bootleg. You know what I mean? Like how the bootleg footage looks, I think, is really what gives people that misconception of the whole, like, it was so bad that they never released it. And that's why I really do think after watching this documentary, like, I almost kind of like hesitate to watch the bootleg until they actually freaking release this thing. Because I feel like that's the only fair way to watch it. I don't want to spoil it for myself. If it really is, like, if there really is a great film underneath it all, you know, underneath all the graininess and poor quality.
Yeah, I mean, and there's the bit with Joseph's son. It's really nice, and I gotta tell you, his son looks really cool in the outfit. Really accurate. Yeah, here's the thing, Dave. The day and age we live in now. If you asked me like 2 years ago, like would we ever see the Fantastic Four from the light of day, I probably would have said no. But I gotta tell you, the era we're in now, like we're having the Jungle movie made, we're having all this stuff done on the splats.
Nostalgia is big. Nostalgia is huge.
You start
money, money.
And all this stuff done with Star Wars and stuff like Rogue One, but more importantly, you're in Spider-Man in the MCU. Now anything is possible. I wouldn't. One of these days, not only let's get in the Fantastic Four in the MCU. I guess a dream job, and that's eventually what they should do. But the point is,
Phase 4, Fantastic Four.
I know. I was saying that, believe me. But first and foremost, let's just get this thing out there as a baby step along that route. You know?
Right.
I'm sure if Marvel, again, if we get the rights to Fantastic Four, that's what Marvel would do because they're classy like that. You know, so here you go, here's the movie, and also here's like the inferior thing. But hey, it was inferior from a time. It was inferior for these reasons. If they're really excellent, they're gonna
just have the malt on there to explain the significance of, you know, the cultural time and whatnot. The malt's like
the malt and Sean Hell.
Like, right? Like the malt is like the ultimate authority on that. Like, you see, back in the 1990s, there was a different process for making movies that younger audiences might not be familiar with. Anyways, I love you.
So again, with Holy here, he's kind of in the mindset of he's letting go, he's moving forward with it. You know, he acknowledges, you know, it's not fair, but you know, it's kind of like it's Chinatown. Jake, can't do anything.
Great ending line, by the way. I love the full circle quality to that line of like it goes back to like the first thing they talk about of like, yeah, this was the seedy part of Hollywood. It wasn't the glamorous part of Hollywood. And then ending on face it, Jake, it's Chinatown. Wonderful for
which is a great structural.
Yeah,
you're right. A wonderful kind of structural full circle thing. Yeah. Absolutely right. Yes.
Okay, Dragon. So we're at the credits. Final thoughts.
Final thoughts. Again, I like this. I remember I think I got the most enjoyment in the first watch. I still there was one watch where I thought they get a little repetitive at the end. But I got to tell you though, again, it's still a lot of great substance. It's a lot of it gives you more discovery and more enjoyment each time you watch it. I find so. I'm still a big fan of this. Again, it's kind of I would love it. We just keep getting movies like kind of these movies that never were. Which
it's a genre that I just really want to just keep expanding and then do more with. Like I love these kind of documentaries. I go nuts for them, Dragon. And I got to tell you, I'm on the edge of my seat to freaking watch that Nightmare on Elm Street documentary you mentioned to me. I am chomping at the bits for that thing.
And here's the thing. Here's the thing. John Schnepp, he mentioned that he was going to do a series of stuff like this.
Oh, Yes,
Now,
yes, please, yes, please. Take
which would
my
include
money.
the George Miller Justice League, the other Superman, like Superman Flyby by J.J.
So by
Abrams.
series, you mean like a YouTube series or
He
a?
didn't spend again. It could be like a Netflix thing, or it could be, it depends like who. The point is like a 10. It could be it's like 10 half an hours, like on TV, like Comic Book Men is like on
Oh my
AMC or something.
god!
But
Oh
the
my
point is,
god!
it would probably be
Yes,
like a 10,
please.
like kind of like a season, like 10, 13 episode
Right,
thing. I'd
that is
suggest.
something like me. I'm very reluctant to crowdfund stuff, but that is something I would throw my money at.
Well, I'm saying again, he mentioned that was in development, but he also had another thing in development, which was crowdfunded, but
Yeah.
unfortunately, he didn't make it. So I'm saying, by all means, the point is, we need more stuff like this. Would definitely be welcome. You know, kind of the stories that never were. However, you're going to be like this though. There is a documentary about the George Miller just like being made, like a full length documentary, not just the John Schnepp kind of hour
Nice,
long,
nice.
the half an hour to an hour long thing. It's like there is like a reportedly there was a George Miller Justice League documentary in the works. So that'd be good to see whenever.
You should also check out Joe Dorosky's Dune.
Hmm.
That one, really, really interesting stuff there. Anyways, Dragon, we've come to the end of our commentary. So, any final? I mean, I know I already asked final thoughts, but any like kind of final things you want to get off your head before we sign out here?
So on the whole, again, I really love this film. I definitely, I think I like it more than the actual Roger Corman Fantastic Four. But you know, I mentioned that because again, I think we have more interesting layers and again, kind of the documentary
Right,
layout.
right.
Basically, it kind of takes the best from that film, puts it in here, even like kind of the worst, but makes it funny. It kind of takes the Fantastic Four, but it also again takes that great score. We get the ending of that trailer.
Mhm.
So we get they use just the right amount of clips and get these great making of things. Again, to me, again, it really sells you on the film, which I think is absolutely what they want to do. It really served the movie well, and it really showed you the vision of the film they wanted to show you. Again, kind of like the Nick Cage photo analogy we've been using. It's like, to me, this cast, I mean, they look, I can't really weigh in on Jay Underwood as Johnny Storm as much, but I mean, the rest of them, again, they look pretty much, they all look from the comic in terms of acting ability. Again, Michael Bailey Smith does make a pretty good Ben Grimm. I'm super impressed by Alex J. I'm sorry, by Alex Hawaii as Reed Richards. I would love to hear him voice Reed Richards in some capacity. I love this guy.
That'd be great. That'd be great.
He embodies a lot of what I love about Reed Richards, and I'm thrilled with him. Again, Joseph Colbert's Doctor Doom is also really good. Again, I love the scenes because the crux of any good Fantastic Four story for me, which I went on and on about in a pitch we made way back when. I'm still really proud of that pitch, by the way.
Yeah, and then meanwhile, my side of the pitch was like this ridiculous, like fucking Wes Anderson Fantastic Four movie where I literally had nothing but the cast and the opening shot.
Yeah, I had the whole MCU. Basically, how I would have pre-Civil War, how I would have introduced the Fantastic Four into a Phase 4 of Marvel.
Wow.
But my point is, like, what I did for that, what I kind of did in that pitch, I think with the actors, Joseph Colvin and Alex Hathaway, I think they still could do, and they still kind of, in those scenes, I kind of get a glimpse at it. Just, I think the real way to do Fantastic Four from is Reed Richards and Doctor Doom, kind of as a character study of those two guys, their relationship being brought down, like, kind of being analyzed, and kind of the strength of their performances, as we've seen in this, I think just feeds into like, oh yeah, it really could make a Fantastic Four film. So I'm still seeing like so much potential, so much what we could use in a Fantastic Four film in this film that was never supposed to be released. Again,
Sure.
It's in the end, this is a hidden gem, and it shouldn't be hidden any longer. So, folks, check it out. Not only just check it out on YouTube, hopefully it'll be released properly for everyone on there, but again, check out this documentary if you can.
Mm-hmm. All right, folks. So yeah, without further ado, Dragon, I definitely think this was a good choice for an Easter special, kind of an unconventional choice, but it is a hidden gem. It is an Easter egg, so I approve.
Someone stuffed the DVD in my egg.
All right, folks. So we certainly hope you enjoy your Easter if you're celebrating Easter this year, and if not, we certainly hope you enjoy your holiday weekend regardless. And until next time, folks, don't forget, it's clobbering time. Move away, folks. Come on. Give them some space. Give them some space, folks. Come on now.